you. What a great intro. My word. Hi, everyone. This is the first time I'm giving this talk in person. I left my luggage at the airport, so I don't have the outfit I prepared for it. Sorry. None of you are sad because you don't know how good it was, but it was really good. But hi, this talk is a gross oversimplification. I'm going to be talking about the state of the industry, theming, styling, and that is a complex, multi-decade-long story that can't be summarized in 30 minutes. So let's summarize it in 30 minutes. If I can, there we go. Yeah, there's all sorts of stuff that I won't cover. I encourage you to learn about all the things on the screen and more. It's fascinating seeing how all these things have evolved over time and how we got to the current state of the industry. Because there's, whatever, Joomla, WordPress, Next.js, Astro. But before all that, before all those things, before the incredible stuff we're going to see today, in the beginning, there was HTML. And HTML was good. Unlike this clicker, what is happening? There we go. I'll stay over here. It's a document thing. Document object model, representation in text. I have an H1, a heading 1. And then, well, it's plain, it's not styled, but that code becomes this output. Amazing. None of you are excited about that because it's just so inherent to what we do now. But back in the day, this was really cool. You could send documents to each other. Wow. This is going to revolutionize the world. But it's plain. So eventually we had styling. Yay! Cascading style sheets, where you could assign, let's say, a class to your H1. Let's say it's a fancy class, and fancy has a particular color, and wow, you can even specify colors with hex codes and have like pixels for your padding. Wow. So you get this beautiful thing. What a good time. But CSS had a problem. CSS was weak. And if you ever look up old memes about CSS, it's brutal. People did not like styling stuff. And my favorite one is this GIF of Peter Griffin from Family Guy, like with the, very relatable. So we made things to help with this as a result. We made frameworks, things like Foundation and the one that I have here, Bootstrap. Does anyone who here used Bootstrap? That was a good time. That was a great framework made by the company formerly known as Twitter. You could define classes like sidebar and content, or rather you could use those classes which were defined for you by the framework, and you had every website looked like this because they all used Bootstrap. Bootstrap also capitalized on, in a good way, the rise of preprocessors. Show of hands, who here used those? Okay, specifically, who here used this stuff? Less? I had a running joke with an old friend. Preprocessors, we need less of them. They're too sassy. Because we first started with CSS, identified the issue that we needed more. We needed like @links, we wanted variables. So Sass came out. I don't remember what it stood for. I did not do enough research for this talk. But Sass was inspired by Ruby and had a white space-based situation there. So we didn't like that. We made less, which then inspired Sassy CSS. I think that's one of the cuter names. And there's an interesting parallel here, because just as that stuff, the preprocessors were happening for CSS, we also had CoffeeScript come out for JavaScript, also inspired by the Ruby, even Pythonic syntax, which we then hard node and went over to more tools like Babel and TypeScript. Later, nowadays, SWC and ESBuild, all of those fun things, which allow you to use newer features that would eventually get built into the language. And that's great. We like building things into the language. Who here uses CSS3? Basically every front-end developer. Because one of the things that we always complained about with old CSS was centering. There are so many memes about centering and whatever. This is how you center. This is one of the good ways of centering in CSS. You can do that in like 3 lines of code for the child, or the centered thing. It's display flex, align. Look at, amazing. Just as how HTML revolutionized animations, just as how HTML revolutionized how you can send documents, CSS3 revolutionized how you can center divs. Equivalent. But more seriously, I think this is the first example in this presentation of a really awesome way that the industry evolves. This beautiful, virtuous cycle. We have some new, better primitives than what we had before. We use them. We identify the common difficulties. we have pain, then we come up with all these different competing solutions. Just as how Ben was showing us all these different ways of doing push-pull, pull-push, observables, signals, runes, all this stuff, we're iterating as a community, and then we come together to build better primitives. And now CSS, for example, has variables. Just like how the preprocessors iterated on and tried different things, now we have built-in variables in CSS. Which brings us to the first hot take of the talk. You probably don't need a CSS preprocessor. Just curious, who here uses SCSS still? Cool. I can't say whether you should or need to, but most production cases that I have seen probably don't need it. They're just using it for like variables, which are now actually built into the platform. So that's a thing. But anyway, let's move on to JavaScript, because we didn't just stop at CSS. We had this whole lineage, and this is the grossest of the oversimplifications. Dear apologies to friends who use anything not on this list. But we iterated. We started with jQuery, where we had nicer ways of working with the DOM and so on. Also a really interesting plugin system. Then we moved to Backbone and Knockout, where we started being more declarative. Then we had that first beautiful round of like Angular 1.0. Oh, beautiful. And then we decided that was ugly, so we moved to the next round with like the modern Angular and Solid and all these. Amazing. Now, when React first came out, CSS modules were quite popular. And I really like CSS modules and bring them up, both because this uses SCSS, which was popular, and I like little dollar signs. They've started showing up everywhere. But also because CSS modules allowed you to take in your styles and use them in the JavaScript landscape. Similar to how there are type and runtime parameters and arguments, you have the styles space, and you have the JavaScript, the runtime space. Styles are very like static. It's the style tag. That can be updated, but is a part of your DOM, whereas JavaScript is running and rerunning. So being able to have like a h1 class name equals some variable, where that variable just so happens to be the string that just so happens to correspond to some style tag class, that's really nice and useful. And if you want it to be a dynamic, well, oftentimes you need a helper like CX, class names, CLSX. There are 50 million NPM packages for this, who would have thought? Where you might, let's say, have a button, and if the button is clicked, you also add in the pressed class. Cool. And this worked. Honestly, I still build my websites. This is how I build a lot of my websites, because I'm lazy and haven't set up tooling to use any of the new fancy things. But I want more. We have all these cool things. This JavaScript, let's take advantage. And one of my personal least favorite, but also, oh my God, no! No! What is happening? This is like the first time I'm giving this talk in person. No! Oh my God. Yeah. It's like it's some sort of intelligence that's artificial on the, all right. I have no idea what I was talking about. All right, styled components. So we have all these dynamic JavaScript abilities, but we were still defining classes or styles, ID tags, whatever, in the static CSS or .module.css file type. So we iterated on this. You could define CSS in these relatively new template literal strings, and then actually have those be linked to your elements, which is really cool. Now, instead of defining your classes or styles in terms of classes, you're defining them in terms of components. Components! And if you want it to be dynamic, well, I personally find this syntax to be a little difficult to explain to people, a little unreadable, but conceptually, I think it's kind of beautiful. The button component is able to take in, let's say, a $ pressed prop, and then that $ pressed prop becomes an argument that's passed in an object to the template literal tag, which indicates whether your color is foreground or background. That's kind of nifty. Also, fun fact, a lot of people, myself included, for the longest time didn't put $ in front of their styled components, or another library is Emotion that does this, in front of their props. So they would just get splatted, put onto the HTML DOM element, which means you would just have a million random HTML DOM elements that are invalid, and you have 50 million warnings in your console. So that's unfortunate. Anyway, because we had all this dynamicism, whether it was your CSS modules or your styled components or whatever, we were able to build really, really beautiful JavaScript-first front ends. For example, this one. What a beautiful website. Seriously, whoever, I forget the name from the slide, but like props to the organizing team. I'm sorry that my ugly face had to go on it, but developers today have these beautiful websites which are complex. They have shared components, headers, footers, faces, and we have needs we've identified. And I think a lot of the needs that I have seen can be summarized in these 4 words. I want my styling to be cart. Convenient, assistable, refactorable, and themable. Convenient. I don't want to have to write 3 different files with XML and whatever in order to define my styles. I used to do like Windows app development, and I'm sorry, it was a lot. I want to be able to just write like a class or like a utility name or something. I don't want to have overhead. It should be assistable. My editor should help me in these things. I don't want to have to define things in plain text. Styled components, we eventually had to make like VS Code and other editor extensions for syntax highlighting because it was just a string. And I want it to be refactorable. I don't know about you, but my code sometimes has to change over time. Sometimes I take over someone else's code and have to change it, heaven forbid. And I need themes, light mode, dark mode, high contrast mode. That's all really important. I also guess performance is important, but unfortunately for many of us, that's not super important because developers, we just want to get the job done. But performance is important. Y'all should really care about this. So our styled components cart, I don't think so. I think they're a little inconvenient. We iterated as a community. There are newer, better ways. And I also want to give a quick shout out to another style of doing things from back in the day called Glamour. The library hasn't had a commit since 2017, and there are quite a few libraries like it. But I really liked how you could define your CSS properties with an object syntax, which I found to be more ergonomic, more convenient. And then if you wanted a button with a pressed prop, you could it's just a JavaScript function. It's just JavaScript, and the way that React is slightly less so just JavaScript. And it was actually, fun fact, made by Sunil Pai, who ended up doing a bunch with React and now made a company called PartyKit, so that's why it hasn't had a commit since 2017, but shout out. Anyway, who here's heard of Tailwind? Awesome, this is the last thing I'm gonna talk about. This is the penultimate, just kidding. Tailwind is not the thing we're gonna end with, but I think it's really important and awesome and satisfies a lot of what we're looking for. Look at this thing. This is one of the most convenient syntaxes I have ever seen. You want your thing to, whatever, have background blue 50? Okay, just put it in the class. Yeah, sorry. Background blue 50. This is interesting, I think, for 3 reasons. One, it is just the most direct-to-consumer way to define styles I've ever seen. Beautiful. And actually, if you look at the newest Bootstrap versions, they have utility classes much like this, which is the second interesting thing. This builds heavily on the concept of utility classes. A class like text center, font bold. One can only imagine what they do. One of the innovations that Tailwind added was a really, really well done build system or set of tooling to optimize your classes so you don't have thousands upon thousands of unused ones. And the third thing is that not only is it utility class focused, it's also token focused. We're no longer defining our, say, colors in terms of just the hex codes or the built-in browser globals. We're defining it in terms of our tokens, our design system, where the built-in Tailwind theming, the default colors, have names like background blue 50. So if you were to put it in code, oh no, it's acting up again. Oh no. Next slide. If you were to put it in code, now, this is where I start to get less excited about Tailwind, because you're just concatenating strings in your dynamic shenanigans. You're, say, based on this pressed piece of state, concatenating a different string to your base. And there are systems in Tailwind to deal with this, but at its core, that's the most common way I've seen people deal with dynamicism. Now back to praising Tailwind. The docs are fantastic. Like truly another innovation, a number 4 for Tailwind, is that their documentation is stellar. And I really hope that this continues to be something the industry learns from. That when you have amazing docs that give you every single possible thing that you would want to use with this system, but also explain them really well and have really clear, simple getting started guides, people will adopt you more. Also, they're just visually pleasing. So is Tailwind cart? Convenient, accessible, no, I already forget what it stands for. Whatever it is, I think Tailwind's pretty good. It's a pretty good style system. It generally supports what we need. It has really nice theming and tokens approach. I didn't show it, but it has like light mode, dark mode, and so on. But it's not TypeScript first class. It's not built with the idea of a type system in mind. It's just strings, which is why if you do this in your code, Tailwind doesn't know whether there's some class there. And again, you can like build tooling, use extensions on top of it. But what I really want is the next set that I'll show, component libraries. Libraries that are built with the idea of your whole system, of not just building on, say, utility classes or utility concepts or tokens or themes, but stuff that pulls it all together. Let's look at Chakra. Who here has heard of Chakra, Chakra UI? Great. I'm not used to so many hands. This is nice. Chakra UI is a really nice component library and system where you can import my favorite component name ever, box, and other more specialized components, each of which are able to take in props defining your styles. And because this is just JavaScript and just TypeScript, as in there's no shenanigan, no build system on top of it, you can have flex, which actually I think might be a type error. I think I have a type error. Or align items equals center. And in theory, these things can both give you autocomplete in your editor, saying, oh, align items equals whatever, center or flex start. And in theory, it should also be able to give you type errors if you mess it up. If you type align items equals nope or wat or something, words that mean nothing, it should give you a complaint. And also because it's just TypeScript, just JavaScript, you're just passing in different values for your props. If we consider pressed as a piece of state again, you again pass in your purple 500 token or your blue 50 token, which is awesome. And I don't want to phrase this as first there was Tailwind, then there were style systems. That's not true. Both Tailwind and Chakra and their equivalents are very themable. Got a side-by-side comparison here. Now, Chakra's got a little bit more code because it's a more intense system. It's got a lot built up. But both do very similar things. If you want to define your own brand colors, your own tokens, for both of them you can. If you want to define that there's a foreground and a background and then have them swapped in, let's say, light mode versus dark mode, that's all doable, which is really nice because as a person who frequently switches between light mode and dark mode and gets nitpicked all the time about it, I want my sites to support that well. Good stuff. Just to really zoom in here, let's say you were to start writing a box component or a specialized heading. You can say as equals h1, which I think is really nifty, and you get autocomplete in your editor. I don't know if there are any other TypeScript wizards in the room, but this is this cute little thing that libraries will do sometimes. They will say that a particular thing, let's say the color type, is a set of literals, so it can be whatever, red or orange, or it can be string and empty object, which tells TypeScript, at the end of the day, give me autocomplete, but also allow me to pass in any string in the world, which is, I think, really clever and cute, but it's also not as type safe as I wanted, because you're allowed any string in the world. So you're allowed to do this, which kind of, to me, is like, well, I wanted carts, and I only have like, well, one of the wheels is like half missing. Now, to be fair, I'm not pooping on Chakra here. They are working on it. There's an awesome PR from 2022 and a set of like innovations they've done where they're trying to make the system at least opt in for stronger type safety. So really, the Chakra team's awesome. Props to them. But I tried looking up the strict token types flag that PR added in the docs. It's not there. It's like a new thing. It'll take some time. But the root issue, the reason why I'm going to show you some more stuff after this, is that Chakra UI is both a component library and a style system. Chakra UI does a lot, which is why it's a little harder to innovate and iterate in it, because it has to encompass so much area and account for so many different user needs. Chakra UI, their documentation phrases it as a component library, That's how they describe themselves. And they also happen to expose an awesome style system, which, interestingly, I think mirrors Bootstrap a little. Because back in the day, Bootstrap did the style system thing. It let you define stuff like container. And it also provided part of what you might use as a component library. Your sidebar, your container fluid. Tailwind is basically just the style system. You can use it to build up your component library, but Tailwind doesn't come with like a card component built in, or a header to my knowledge. You might build a component library on top of it. For example, the Tailwind people made Tailwind UI, which is also fantastic. But Chakra UI, similar to Bootstrap, and even more fancily than Bootstrap, does both component library and style system concerns, which is really convenient. But I want just style systems. The thing, we're about almost exactly 20 minutes into this 30-minute talk, and I'm finally getting to the thing in the title, style systems. Let's look at my favorite style system, Vanilla Extract. Who here's heard of Vanilla Extract? Awesome. A few. The number of hands has steadily decreased as the talk went on. We started with TypeScript. We're going to end with something that's like not even production ready after this. That's a joke. Everything here is production ready. Vanilla Extract is just the part of the style system from conceptually the same types of things as Chakra UI. You define your tokens, like your color.background, your space.medium, which then gives you a theme class that you can use and a set of variables, which is an object of strings pointing to the CSS variable names. And the way you use it is after you've defined the theme in a .css.ts or .js file, you can then just refer to those in these objects, kind of like that old Glamour API. And now we have, kind of like Glamour, div class name equals container, and the container has a line item center, display flex, and then the h1 is a great example of using the variables. That's so cool. This is the exact same API almost as Glamour. To me, it's the same conceptual API. But on the inside, this actually really well embraces the pattern. Pardon me, the platform. Oh no, it clicked. The platform. Because the class names from the style function are actual class names. They're not some dynamic JS construct that's like constantly giving you performance issues, which some of the other libraries do. And the variables are actual CSS variables, mirroring between CSS land and JavaScript land. I think that's awesome. Embracing the platform. Who would have thought that's the future? And then even better, we get type systems. We get, if you use a variable, well, it's just a JavaScript object. So if you put in wats, which again means nothing, hooray, you get a type error. And I think that's a treat. I'm really excited about Vanilla Extract and its family of libraries. So style systems, Vanilla Extract does that really well. And we could stop here. And I'm really happy with what's happened so far. But I'm scared about what the slides are going to do with this. I need more. I actually really like boxes. I like the box prop model. It's very divisive, this stuff. So on top of Vanilla Extract, I want to show you something cool, but it's very experimental, barely production ready for the public world. Something called Rainbow Sprinkles. Vanilla Extract, Rainbow Sprinkles. If you were to, let's say, call the Rainbow Sprinkles API, which takes in a bunch of properties, each of which can be either true to indicate, I want to use just the DOM, like the native ones, the general CSS. I said DOM, I meant CSS. Or I want to specifically limit it to the tokens that I use. Like background should only ever be one of my color variables. And then I wanted to make it type safe with this little sprinkles utility, a little sprinkle of type safety on top. Then you could do this. You could have that. I've obfuscated a lot of the code underneath it because it's kind of experimental, and I couldn't actually figure out how to get it to work without TypeScript complaints, so that's nice. But look at this. Look at box background equals $background. That's really cool. This is not for everyone, I recognize that. But I think it's a really interesting way to combine use the platform, CSS, class names, and variables approach of Vanilla Extract with the box components that I personally just find really convenient. And again, because this is just JavaScript, just TypeScript, props are border color equals whatever, Pressed is one thing, not is another. Yes, cool, innovation. This makes me happy. Unfortunately, I could not figure out a way to get rainbow sprinkles to be type safe. I couldn't figure out a way to get it to yell at me about color equals wat. It's also like a new project from Wayfair, the furniture-ish company. So it's real new. It's like not, this is early stage. I was real disappointed to realize that. And by the way, I do want to note on the oversimplification thing, we've actually had what I just showed for a while. There's this awesome library called Style System that does it for style components, but I really like how Rainbow Extract builds, so whatever. Type-safe style systems are coming. I want to give you advance notice of this, that what I just showed you is going to be your state of life if you're still a front-end developer in like 5 to 10 years. I'm 100% confident in this prediction, which is stupid. Don't listen to me. No one should ever be 100% confident in their predictions. I think it'll happen eventually. It might look like this. It might look like something else. And I want to explain to you why I'm so confident in this. Because, like many developers, I have opinions, and now you're gonna hear about them. Here's an opinion of mine. Yeah. Most projects, anything not particularly small, should probably use a design system. At the very least, you want to separate out your tokens, like your colors, your spacing, and so on, from your application logic. That way, if you refactor, if you change them over time, a little easier, makes your code more semantic and easy to read. If you see button class equals backgrounds subtle rather than BG blue 50, it's easier to understand what's happening. And it makes your code more reactive. If you base your styling on your theme, on your token values, then the theme can update those values. If you say your button background is background subtle, the theme can define a different color. Whereas the way a lot of people use systems like Tailwind is they will explicitly put the hard-coded color in like the hex even, and then have a different hex for dark mode. Just define that once, and then let your theme define what is each theme's version. I said the word theme a lot, I'm sorry. Anyway, all these systems have strengths and weaknesses. I want to be very clear here that this is not pooping on Tailwind or Chakra or Vanilla Extract or styled Glamour, whatever. These all have advantages and disadvantages. And this gets violated a lot on Twitter. I don't know if you've ever seen this happen. People are constantly yelling about how that thing is bad, about how real developers use this or that, which is just so annoying because we're at early stages as an industry. You know, I was born before CSS. Like, this stuff is really new, and we're figuring out together what's great in a decade is not necessarily anything like what we have today. If you don't know a statement to be true, don't positively amplify it. General life advice there. And this is actually a really difficult statement to state because knowing isn't the same thing as believing, but like classical philosophy tells us that you can't really know anything. So I don't know how to make any of this true. So instead, I'll just say, if you haven't put in a good faith effort to validate something, then don't amplify it. You know, whatever, fine. So instead of saying Tailwind bad or Tailwind only acceptable or real devs do or don't this thing, maybe have a nuanced opinion. Like I prefer whatever, a tool over Tailwind or under Tailwind because Tailwind is good or bad in this way that I experienced and I like that other thing. Whew. Thanks. I am so excited to get subtweeted. Like I've never been subtweeted before after this. It's going to be miserable. All right. Much like working in Tailwind. Just kidding, just kidding. If you want to learn more about the things that we talked about, go to these resources. They're fantastic. At least vanilla extract.style is. The rest, well, Wayfair Rainbow Sprinkles is really new, so give it some space. Just see it as a reference. And all the examples are in a repo that I put on GitHub. The titles, like 3-CSS3, are folders in that repo. Fun fact about me, as was mentioned, I work in the TypeScript ecosystem. I don't do any of this on a day-to-day basis. This is just fun for me. I used to be on a web platform team, and now I'm like off in open source lands. I also wrote a learning TypeScript book, so you can buy that, at least until Matt's book comes out. And I'm a Microsoft MVP for developer technologies. Thanks. I am also giving a talk on the actual things I do day to day tomorrow, so you should attend that. But thanks all, this has been fun.